The storm around Dis-chem continues. The company issued a moratorium on hiring and promoting white people to improve its employment equity profile. This, of course, has since been withdrawn. Now, Dis-chem saying that it acknowledges that the memo did not reflect its values. Solidarity also threatening to take the company to court, while some white Twitter users threatened to boycott the company, while others welcomed the decision, saying it was critical to address the issues of redress. So let's now speak to Miranda Hosking, Gibbs Business School Managing Executive of Social Education. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Dis-chem saying it regrets the wording and the tone of the internal memo. Let's start with your response and your reaction to this.
I think that the tone of the initial memo was certainly problematic. I think that it conveyed the idea of compliance. So it was very focused on compliance, as opposed to what the Act is really about, which is around transformation. In addition to that, I think that the legislation around employment equity requires wide consultation with internal stakeholders, which include staff. In this instance, the consultation was limited to senior management, which means that it was quite, exclusive of the rest of the tiers of staff and employees in the company. And that by itself is also quite contrary to what the intention around employment equity legislation is. And that is about having diverse views and diverse inputs into data collection and also into decision-making processes when it comes to employment equity.
And some have said that, the memo, as we saw it on social media doing the rounds, and I'll read in part, it says, so when no suitable black candidate is found and a white is appointed, we need several blacks just to maintain the status quo, never mind moving forward. This kind of makes black people sound like we are tokens, mere numbers, rather than deserving candidates that should be put in positions.
Correct. And I agree with you. I think that the tone, when it comes to speaking about referring to blacks is quite offensive. I also think that it diminishes the role that black people play in the economy and that they play in organizations and leading companies in this country. So the fact that the reference is made to blacks and then white people is inherently problematic.
And I wonder, though, Miranda, if you think companies, because, when you look at that memo and you look at even the response, it talks about just the Act, employment. You can kind of see that it's against that backdrop that it was put together. But are companies having an honest conversation about transforming their organizational culture as well, which goes beyond representation, to ensure also that black people are participating in the direction of the businesses, as opposed to just being hired simply to just, get the numbers in?
I agree with you, and this is why I referred to the fact that I think that the tone was very much around compliance. And compliance, by its very nature, is not good enough when it comes to transformation. Transformation, at the heart of it, is about changing hearts, minds, processes, and the way that we do business. Beyond that, I think it's also important to acknowledge the fact that management control is but one of three priority sectors in the BEE scorecards. And so we do need to take account of the fact that there are two other priority elements aside from the rest of them. The other one is ownership. And so without ownership and properly reflecting black people's place in the economy, in terms of the ownership structures of companies, we are only going to go so far around representation of black people in decision-making, in setting the direction for companies, and in the way that we contribute to the economy. Aside from that, a third priority element is enterprise and supply development. And so it really is about how do we meaningfully engage with black companies, with black people around business? How do we transform supply chains and make sure that large companies are contributing to transformation of the economy at an overall level, and that it's not just about management control, which really means that people are employed, but it's also about facilitating opportunity for meaningful engagement in economic development and economic growth.
And you know, when we talk about these three pillars, as you talk about, let's then look at, you know, the companies. You know, some companies in South Africa even still right now are battling with the issues of inclusivity, still battling with issues around transformation. And one wonders if this is an issue of a lack of commitment, simply not prioritizing the issue, or is there something else more at play here? How do companies then begin to ensure that this process is done, and whether or not they are going to, you know, ensure that their survival or compliance, but simply done to ensure that the mindsets of their employees are also changed? It's not simply just about ticking the boxes. How can they get this one right?
I think that it begins with meaningful engagement with internal stakeholders. So, like I said, in this regard, the CEO's letter was addressed to senior management, and that cuts out a huge proportion of the employees even that work for Dis-chem. Second to that, I think that meaningful external engagement is important. So with policymakers, with other business leaders, with various other stakeholders in terms of the ecosystem. And then I think that we can't just think of transformation around, you know, ticking the boxes around on numbers. We have to think about, you know, the broader picture. How do we capacitate people to be able to meaningfully engage in the economy? How do we make sure that we transfer ownership? How do we make sure that, you know, we invite the right stakeholders to the table when it comes to decision making? And that begins with consultation.
All right, Miranda, thank you so much for your time this evening. Do appreciate it. That was Miranda Hosking, Gibbs Business School Managing Executive of Social Education.